Welcome to the show, Abbey Nation Sports Talk up and rolling. It's Monday. We are on a little bit later than usual today because the big show started an hour later today. He's Vince. I'm Sean. You can just call us the NFA crew today, the Not Fooling Around crew.
Setting the tone early. I like it.
Right. We're here. We are hardcore.
Oh, boy.
Coming at you live. That's what it is.
It's a lot of pressure is what that is.
This is actually the second straight show that we've started.
That is true.
6 o'clock. So TD4ND is asking if this is the new start time. Officially, no, but there has been some behind the scenes talk that like the show could move back to a 6 o'clock start time, which based on these last 2 days, I don't know about you, Vince. Like this extra hour for me has just been brutal. Like
it threw everything off because usually I eat dinner after the show, and today I ate dinner before the show. So I'm kind of rushing through dinner because, you know, the rest of the family doesn't necessarily want to eat at 5 o'clock or whatever the time, you know, so like it definitely threw some things off. Like it's a new norm, I guess, but I don't know. We'll see. And it depends on the day. Like sometimes I'm all for it. Like 5 o'clock, let's roll on this thing. And then there's other days where I'm rushing to get home at 5 o'clock. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, an extra hour wouldn't be terrible. So I don't know.
I'm sitting here looking at some of these comments. I mean, today I think everybody probably knew we were going to talk about quarterbacks today. I mean, what else?
Of course we are.
Were we going to talk about? You know,
right? Of course we are.
Blue Gold game is over. We got to see all three of them, Angeli, Minchey, and Carr.
You haven't had a chance to give, say your piece on the situation.
I know you guys did the post game show on Saturday, right. So I haven't been able to jump. I doubt anything that I'm going to say is much different than what you had to say because we were looking, we were sitting next to each other, obviously, and it was funny because every time CJ Carr would drop a pretty little dime, to a place where only he could put it, the three of us would just look at each other on cue.
Be like, oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to come up with the reasons in our head that other people would say, yeah, we need to have a different guy at quarterback. Okay. Never mind. We'll get into it. But we're
here to get into it. We're here to get into it.
It does still amaze me that there are people that are just holding on, man, holding on strong.
The percentage is a lot smaller, though. Honestly, I thought there might be some people, who would go kicking and screaming even harder, and I suppose some of them are, but it feels to me like the percentage has shrunken quite a bit. It's like, before election night, you have all these thoughts of what things are going to be. Election night shows up and, your margins end up in a lot different places,
right,
than maybe what you expected. And I think the margins have shrunk for a couple of, for one specific guy, but, for at least a couple of them, I think it feels like there's a pretty strong CJ Carr camp, I think, right now. I'll just go out and say it.
Pretty good reason.
Yeah,
and I don't think you had to be there in person to appreciate it. I feel like it came through the television set, but that's just me.
Well, for us, it came through the television set about 30 seconds in delay because it was streaming. We're trying to look at like replays, and we look up, and it's like they're still on the last
two plays ago.
Before. What's going on?
Kidding me.
Before we get into this, though, what went through your head when they brought out Blake Hebert for some 7-on-7 to start the day off?
I will tell you exactly my train of thought. Okay. So, we're all sitting there, we're looking at the countdown clock, we're getting ready for the whole thing to start. And we kind of have an idea of what it's going to look like, similar to what we were able to see last Saturday. It's me, first team offense, first team defense, and then 2s against 2s, so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, I see a female manager running out onto the field with the strip. And I'm like,
the yellow strip,
which signifies where the offensive linemen line up. Like that's why it's there. It's so you don't have to have an offensive line, right? It makes perfect sense. That way you get, your proper splits for the wide receivers, and all that. It makes sense. Why is she putting that in the middle of the field? What is happening? And I see both teams run out, and I'm like, there are no linemen on the field right now.
Yeah, and you started telling me there's no linemen out there. This is going to be 7-on-7. I'm like, what? What are you talking about?
It's like we're about to witness 7-on-7 at a blue gold game, and then of course Blake Hebert runs out as well.
Right.
And it's like, and Blake Hebert gets the start. I looked at you and I go, write that down. Write that down.
And I'm like, did they really bring 40,000 people here to go 7-on-7? Because then, Hebert basically just kind of starts playing pitch and catch, with these receivers. It was literally like less than practice worthy,
Yes, agreed. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, when you take, a step back, you're like, okay, well, it makes sense. They don't have enough offensive linemen where they can probably run a legitimate third team.
Right.
Got it. Like, I get it. Actually, it would be a legitimate fourth team is what it would be, right? Because they kind of ran with first, second, and third because they had extra linemen this time around because the starters actually played. So they didn't have enough linemen for a fourth team. Like, I get it. And I get that you want those guys to have some time. And it all makes sense, of course. It's just, I've been to about 20 blue gold games, and I've never seen 7-on-7.
Never seen it start that way.
Nope.
I thought we were in for a long day.
Yeah, I really did too.
I was like, what?
Man,
what universe am I in? What is going on right now? I thought I was in the upside down.
Gosh, man. And that's where I was actually hoping for, a script kind of a deal. You know what I mean? So I kind of knew what was going on. And then, of course, I did look a little closer into the notes, and there was some clues as to what was going to happen, but they didn't really give us like a heads up that there was going to be like 2 intermissions. It was like a hockey game, 4 series, intermission, 4 series, intermission, 4 series. It was just, I don't know, had a weird vibe to the whole thing, to be perfectly honest.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Anthony, thank you as always for your super chat. We appreciate it. And the note that comes along with us,
Thanks,
with it, as we get things started today. Crank that like button and get us rolling. Glad to have you here if you're live on the show today. A lot of good stuff. So for you, did anything you saw Saturday change your mind about who should be the guy?
Not even a little bit. I think it probably cemented the thoughts that I already had. And I kind of had mentioned this post the Saturday practice that we got to see, right? And we got to see all 3 quarterbacks do their thing. And limited to a degree, small sample size, et cetera, et cetera. But now we get to see the blue gold game, and it was more of the same to me, right? It just cemented what I know about these guys, or at least what I thought I knew, what I think I know about these guys. Again, I'm not at every practice, but what I've seen of all 3 of these guys in other practices and other seasons and whatever, this was a microcosm of who they are. And it just, put some space in between the guys to me, and seeing it again just made it that much more palpable for me as to who probably lines up where when it's all said and done. And, got to see it in front of 40,000 people, which made it a little bit better because other people got to see it too.
Remember all those things I said Friday? Probably not, because people only seem to remember, the stuff that they can throw in your face when you're wrong. But I'll just refresh your memory. Remember when I said that you and I would run around your house in our underwear?
I remember
nothing but our underwear
at
midnight if either Carr or Minchey wasn't the starter. And then I said, when someone asked why all these former quarterbacks like Angeli so much, I said it was basically because they haven't seen Carr or Minchey play yet. Like, remember that? Like, I think we all saw that out there. And even Christopher, who has been the staunchest of Steve Angeli defenders. I respect you, Christopher. He says, Sean, I have to let Steve Angeli go. For this show, I will have to swallow my pride. Said CJ is the clear favorite to be the starter, but if offensive line is elite this year, CJ will have all the time in the world to throw.
I mean, look, I respect the heck out of Christopher, to be perfectly honest with you, because I get it, man. You find a quarterback that you fall in love with, and it's a ride or die situation. But I respect the fact that you can watch a spring game, a practice, whatever, and at least be able to watch from a neutral perspective to see who the better person is without the blinders of who you want to be the starter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Christopher saw what all of us saw, that there was a pretty clear-cut depth chart when it was all said and done based on the way that they played on Saturday, and it's not all that close to me. I mean, you could say 1 and 2 are kind of close, and then there's a little bit of a gap to number 3. And it is what it is, but I respect the crap out of Christopher for being able to say that in a public forum, and like, hey guys, I love the guy, but he's not the guy that we want to start. And
right.
I appreciate that.
And you can still respect everything that he's put in to Notre
100%.
Dame. And, again, this is not about who's put in the most time and who's the most loyal to Notre Dame and all those kind of things. It is simply about who's the best man for the job. And it's just such an important position that you can't lean on those, you can't just go to tenure for this thing. That's not what it's about. You have to go, who is the best guy for the job?
Yeah.
And, again, like watching those guys Saturday, watching those guys last week, and you can go back to last spring even. CJ Carr is clearly the best guy for the job. It just looks so different than either of the other two. And like for the Steve Angeli comparison specifically, it's just, to me, it's really tough. It's really tough. If you're still on Steve Angeli at this point, then there's nothing that we're ever going to be able to say that's going to convince you otherwise, because you're just emotionally attached to the guy, and that's what you want to see.
And that's what a lot of the takes have been over the last 48 hours of guys that are still, or gals, that are still in the Steve Angeli camp, that he should be the starter and all of these different, and that he gives the best opportunity to win on August 31st down at Miami.
Why?
Exactly.
He's not the best guy. Why does that give you the best opportunity to win?
Right.
Because he's got this much more experience, and I'm holding my finger and thumb together. Like literally, if either Minchey or CJ Carr gets the start in the season opener, whoever makes that start will have the same amount of career starts as Steve Angeli, and everyone keeps wanting to talk about the experience advantage that he has.
That's true.
Like what?
Right.
Where are we? Well, no. I'm sorry. I can't get on board with, because, look, I'll tell you what. Let's play some of these comments first. I want to play the comments, and then we can get into full-fledged, because we're going to hear from Marcus Freeman in a second. But Eli Raridon was, he was one of the 2 players that came out after the game, and Eli Raridon got to talk a little of the Notre Dame quarterback competition afterwards.
There's not specifically one guy. All 3 of them have had moments where you're like, oh my gosh, like they're doing great, and they're all continuing to get better. And all 3 of those guys are great, and I don't know where it's headed, but they're all doing really good things, and whoever it is going to do a good job. So yeah, extremely hard. They're all playing at a very high level, and if I were to make a decision, I wouldn't know who to pick either. So yeah, it's definitely a hard decision for them, and whoever it is will do a good job.
Very well said for a guy who obviously didn't want to talk about the quarterback competition.
And I wouldn't if I was him either. I'd be real honest with you, because what good does it serve to, pick a guy and roll with him in a press conference where your head coach hasn't picked a guy to run with? Like there's no winning there, because what if you pick a guy that's not the starter? Then it looks like there's a fission in the locker room, and like he has to do what he has to do. But give that kid some truth serum, and I guarantee you he has a different answer.
Yes, exactly. This is a great point from Salty. Notre Dame rewarded Angeli for his loyalty by giving him a legitimate shot to be the starting quarterback. And, but from that point, it's on him. Like, yeah, like
that's perfect.
The time and everything that he's put into the program gave him the opportunity to win the starting job.
Right.
And now it's just about, are you good enough or not? And like all that other stuff doesn't matter right now. And it won't matter at the end of August when they go down to Miami to open up the season.
Correct. Yeah. It's not going to matter at all.
Yeah.
And look, is Miami going to be a hostile environment? Sure. I don't think it's going to be anything like the last time Notre Dame was down in Miami to play Miami. Obviously, they were down there for the Orange Bowl to play Penn State. That worked out well for the Irish. I don't believe that it will be the kind of atmosphere that it was when Notre Dame crapped the bed against them. Remember, they went in there undefeated, sky high and everything else, and they got their lunch handed to them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see the environment being like that. Completely different team, different coaching staff. It's just completely different vibes around this Miami team that now as opposed to back then. So it was a house of horrors that day. There's no doubt about it. But I just don't think it's going to be like that this time around. And
Pat wants to know why. Like, why don't you I mean, it's still going to be Notre Dame. It's going to be the season opener and all that kind of stuff.
For sure. I don't think Miami's as good as they were then, to be perfectly honest with you.
I agree.
They're going to have a brand new starting quarterback as well. Now he's got experience under his belt. I get that,
but it
not
might
with
not
Miami
even be
players.
Carson Beck. Like, we don't know what his health is going to be at that point.
That's a great point. Look, Notre Dame will have won down in Miami more recently than Miami has won in Miami.
True.
So
Orange Bowl.
Yeah, in the Orange Bowl. So I have no qualms about Marcus Freeman getting his team ready for a big game at all. At all. This is not the last regime where you quiver at big games. If anything, Marcus Freeman gets his team more better. That's not right. He gets his teams more prepared for big games than he does for the NIUs of the world. Now, I think he's learned his lesson there. I've never had an issue with him getting teams ready for big games. And so he will have this team ready. And if it is, in fact, CJ Carr, when they go down on August 31st down to Miami, that kid's unflappable. I don't care what anybody says. I have all the faith in the world that CJ Carr will be ready for that game and for that atmosphere. Full capability in that moment.
Me too. Absolutely. All right, so now let's hear from Marcus Freeman. He gave a nice little breakdown of the quarterbacks and kind of what's going to happen now here, in the next several days, basically.
A lot of teaching opportunities, I'm sure. I'm not truly outcome driven, so I think we had one turnover. And then again, I don't know if it was the route, the throw, but it was a lot of good from all three guys and a lot of teaching opportunities, as we'll go back and watch. But it was a reflection of how the first 11 practices have been. Those guys have been battling. They've all improved. They're all, doing some really good things. And it's crazy to think this. You got three guys that all can lead your program to a victory, right, and be your starting quarterback. So we'll evaluate it. We'll talk about it and, have discussions moving forward. Again, you would like to be able to kind of go in the fall with a two quarterback battle. It's really hard with truly having a three quarterback battle, but we got to sit down and have conversations about what's best for our program, what's best for our quarterbacks, and, we'll make those decisions in the future.
So there's a lot there, especially toward the end. A few different things stood out, but one of them being, he said it was a reflection of how the first 11 practices have gone. Obviously, the Blue Gold game being practice number 12, essentially. So if that's the case, there is no doubt in my mind that CJ Carr is the guy. If what we saw Saturday is a true reflection of what they've seen over the course of the spring, there can't be any doubt that CJ Carr is the guy. It's just different with CJ Carr. To me, Angeli is a game manager. And, as he said, you can win games with all three of these guys, which again, Angeli has proven. He's got his one start in the Sun Bowl, but he's a game manager, where Minchey is an athlete with the big arm, who can run the offense adequately enough. Like we've seen from him this spring, that he's a lot better in terms of having a full grasp and command of the offense. But CJ Carr is he's got full command of the offense, and he's accurate. He's got the true arm talent. His arm's not as big as Kenny Minchey's, but he can just do different things in the way he reads things, anticipates things. Everything is so much different than either of the other two guys.
100%. And the offense moves differently when CJ Carr is in charge of it. I mean, he on his first drive with the first team, he drives them down, from the 5-yard line for a field goal try. I mean, that's his first time running the first team in front of 40,000 people, right? Like, didn't have any issues. I believe he went 5 for 5.
That first drive, he completed all 5 of his passes. And the first one was probably the toughest one.
Correct.
The pass to Bauman, who's double covered over there on the sideline.
100%. And, just the stat breakdown between the 3 quarterbacks, with the first team, with the second team, with the third team that Brian did over on the board, just even more so highlights. Like, you can sit and watch a game, and with your naked eye, you can tell who the better of the 3 quarterbacks are. And you can probably tell who the second best quarterback is, and you can tell who the third best quarterback is with your eyeballs, right? Now, sometimes stats can lie, or sometimes stats can make you second guess maybe what you saw with your eyes. That was not the case once you saw the stat lines that these guys had against the first team, second team, and third team. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how else to say it. I'm glad that people are coming on board with what we have been trying to tell people for the last month.
Well, look,
they got to see it. I mean, I don't know.
The anticipation, again, his anticipation and feel are so different. Like the other two, especially Angeli, they're all going to be more like stop route type throws. And I've got a breakdown that I'll talk about, like where like we talked about on Friday with some of the stuff, like the actual ball in the air, like that kind of stuff. I'll talk about that here in just a minute. Like the comparison is really telling when you look at each of the 3 quarterbacks. But like the throw to Xavier Southall at the end, again, he throws it out in front of him. Like CJ Carr, the way he throws the ball, not only as Anthony was saying, makes, NFL type throws. He made 2 of them on that first drive alone, but he throws the ball differently than the other 2 in that where he throws it gives these guys the best chance to actually catch the ball in stride and then get maximum effect in terms of yards after catch after the ball is in their hands.
100%. And just so, this was posted yesterday at 1 a.m., so I think this is okay to kind of put out there. Against the first team D, here are the stats. Carr was 5 for 5 for 62 yards, and his team hit a field goal. Angeli was 2 of 5 for 16 yards, no scores. Minchey was 1 of 4 for 15 yards, no scores. That's quarterbacking the first team against the first team defense, right? Versus the second team defense, Angeli 4 of 4, 27 yards, 1 punt, 1 turnover drive, like the turnover on downs. Carr 5 for 10, 56 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Minchey 4 of 9, 43 yards, 1 field goal, 1 turnover on downs. And then against the third team, Angeli 3 for 3, 66 yards and a touchdown. Carr 3 of 3, 43 yards and a touchdown. Minchey 2 of 2 for 41 yards and a rushing touchdown. So obviously all 3 guys were perfect against the third team, and they should be, right? They should be,
because it's the third team.
Correct. 1 guy stood out against the first team, and 1 guy stood out against the second team. I don't know how more clear. Again, stats aren't everything, and stats are for losers, or whatever your shirt usually says. But you've got the naked eye, and you've got
the reason stats are for losers is because if all you did was look at the final stat line at the end of the game,
right,
then it would say, wow, Carr and Angeli are fairly close. If all you're doing is looking at the final stat line
because of that last drive that Angeli had. Yeah.
And, let's be honest, because, the catch and run by Nolan James, he caught it 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and he ran for 37 yards on his own. But that's, part of that 66 yards that you're talking about against the third team that Angeli has. And, I'm not like trying to tear him down by saying it by any means, but, but I'm glad that you broke all that down, because in one of the write-ups that I had, because someone said, well, Brian broke all this, against the first team, second team, third team, it would give more context. Well, as you know, like sitting next to me during the game, what I have to chart and what Brian has to chart are two completely different things, because I'm trying to give, a condensed, quickly digestible recap of the game, where Brian, is going to go deeper into that kind of
course,
analysis. But like having a little bit of time after the fact, the farthest the ball traveled on a Steve Angeli completion was 14 yards. Okay. The rest were all within 7 yards of the line of scrimmage. He had 7, 6, 2, and 2, and behind the line a couple of times as well, because they were screen passes, obviously. So you had one ball that went in the air that was completed of more than 7 yards, the 14-yarder. In fairness, Minchey and Carr obviously both had some short passes as well. I'm not saying everything that they threw was downfield. Minchey, though, completed passes that traveled 15, 19, and 20 yards in the air. Now, obviously, those were the completions. They obviously had some they all had incompletions, obviously.
And there was a couple that I think probably should have been caught for Minchey, to help him out a little bit, but that's neither here nor there.
Right.
I like that he was pushing the ball down the field a little bit.
Right. So, so Minchey had 3 balls completed that traveled farther than Angeli's longest, in the air,
that were more than 15 yards. Yeah.
Right. CJ Carr completed passes that traveled 14, 16, 17, and 26 in the air. So he had 4 that were at least as long, 3 longer than Angeli. And, again, like that to me is a huge difference, because while, and again, I go back to, you can't come to any conclusion with Steve Angeli other than game manager. When you look at that, where are the balls going? How far are the balls traveling in the air? Because of the way he processes, which is just, it's not at the same level as CJ Carr. It typically turns into a check down. So you get all these short passes. Well, long-term, that's not going to work out for you. Like in a 2-minute drill, it worked out fine because,
soft coverage,
you've got short passes, you're getting it out quick.
And they're a defense that was prepared for Riley Leonard. So, I mean, it's a different game plan. If you went to Penn State and you're like, look, Steve Angeli is going to be the starting quarterback, it would be a completely different defensive game plan. First of all, it wouldn't just be a rush 4 situation where they, by the way, got 2 sacks on that drive. But it wouldn't be just a rush 4 drop 8 situation. It would be, we're going to put pressure on this guy and force him to beat us with his arm. It's just completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Completely different.
DK being DK is asking how far CJ Carr's interception was. I can find out here in a second, but I want to say what it was, maybe 15, 20 yards downfield, something like that.
Yeah, probably. It was not a short pass by any means.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to use that against, CJ Carr, again, the thing that you have to look at with Steve Angeli, if that's your, if that's who you're comparing him to, is that Angeli's never going to be willing to try pass like that, because he's only going to throw to a wide open guy. And that's part of my point. And that's why the passes end up being in that shorter range, because those are the guys who are ultimately end up being wide open.
Right. 100%. I mean, look, and it's obviously it's a spring game, and I'm not making excuses. It was a ball that he should not have thrown, but in a spring game, throw it. Like, I don't really have an issue. Like, throw it. That's great. And then we can teach you not to throw it. You know what I mean? It's teach tape. That's exactly what you want. And that's okay. Now, would we be,
no, balls DK, I know you're not arguing for Steve. Like, I know that's not your point. But
we know, DK. we know that you haven't been.
I said from the start you were being sarcastic.
Yeah. So, yeah.
But there are going to be some people who want to use that against Carr, basically.
And that's fine. You know what? He threw a pick. He did. He's the only one that threw a pick. Kenny Minchey probably should have thrown a pick, but it got dropped in the end zone. But it wasn't. It wasn't a pick. So there we go. You know what I mean? And Steve never put the ball in harm's way to throw an interception. And I know that that's what is going to be the leading argument for a lot of Steve apologists. It's just going to be he doesn't turn the ball over. You're right. But he goes 3 and outs a lot, and he throws the ball away a lot, and he takes sacks a lot. That's just almost just as bad as trying to push the ball down the field, So, and TD4ND says, who's the better decision-making quarterback? That's a no-brainer for me.
It's Carr.
It's Carr. Yeah. Not only is he a better decision-making quarterback, he's a faster decision-making quarterback. That is where he is head and shoulders above the other two, because Kenny has a great arm where he can make up for the fact that some of his decision-making is a little bit slower. Steve's is the third slowest, and he has the slowest delivery and the slowest ball. Bad combination.
But Carr also, part of his decision-making is, again, like the receiver doesn't have to be open, in the second that he's looking at him. He knows where the receiver is supposed to go. So if the receiver's running the route that he's supposed to run, Carr obviously has the confidence that, again, it goes back to the anticipation. It's more than just seeing what's happening in this split second. It's what's going to happen next that really, to me, pushes Carr to that next level, because he's like his processing isn't just like now. It's a step ahead of right now.
He just sees the field so much differently than the other two. He just does. He processes things quickly. He's got a quick release, and he's got a fastball that the other two don't have. Kenny Minchey's got a very strong arm, no doubt about it. He just doesn't process quite as fast as CJ Carr, so it makes CJ's ball look better, and he finds more open guys. Mm-hmm. That's the difference, okay? There's a lot of years where Kenny Minchey would have been the starting quarterback at Notre Dame.
Sure.
And I'd have been ecstatic about it. And frankly, even if he is the starting quarterback at Notre Dame in 25, I'm not upset about it, because I think he's really good. But that's how good CJ is. That's the thing. And I don't think that, I think that's what people are missing the most. You know what I mean? It's not that that Kenny's a bad quarterback. I think he's a really good quarterback. It's just that CJ's better.
Right.
CJ's elite right now. Now, he still has to go out and prove it on the field and all of those things. No doubt about it. But I wouldn't mind putting my money in that corner of the table.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And at the end of that soundbite that I played of Marcus Freeman, he talked about the fact that practice is winding. They actually are going to have like 3 more practices before, everything is said and done, which is unique. The fact that they're practicing more after the blue gold game, because typically blue gold kind of wraps up the spring, but with the schedule, and I forgot that this coming up weekend is Easter, which is probably why they didn't want to put the blue gold game next weekend. So that's part of why.
Which makes sense. I mean, I thought it honestly, when I thought there was dates being whispered about the blue gold game, like during playoff time and stuff like that, and I thought it was going to be later, even the week after. I think, which
would be NFL draft, and I don't know if they want to avoid that.
So there you go.
As well,
I get that. Yeah, no, I totally get that. So this is the date that they picked. I think a lot of it centered around the transfer portal, to be perfectly honest with you. But hey, it ended up being a beautiful day. We got to see good football. And again, a lot of people kind of came to the bright side of the quarterback race.
Okay, I'll go ahead and play that Marcus Freeman clip again so we can hear what he said there kind of at the end.
A lot of good, a lot of teaching opportunities, I'm sure. I'm not truly outcome driven. So I think we had 1 turnover. And then again, I don't know if it was the route, the throw, but it was a lot of good from all 3 guys, and a lot of teaching opportunities, as we'll go back and watch. But it was a reflection of how the first 11 practices have been. Those guys have been battling. They've all improved. They're all, doing some really good things. And it's crazy to think this. You got 3 guys that all can lead your program to a victory, right, and be your starting quarterback. So we'll evaluate it. We'll talk about it and, have discussions moving forward. Again, you would like to be able to kind of go in the fall with a 2 quarterback battle. It's really hard with truly having a 3 quarterback battle, but we got to sit down and have conversations about what's best for our program, what's best for our quarterbacks, and we'll make those decisions in the future.
So that last part is what I was kind of getting to next, is because as Outbound says, CJ will win QB1. So the next question is, who's number 2? We know what we get with Steve.
Sure.
Not sure how Kenny would handle the 2 spot. And this is the question, because I think we're all in agreement, whether or not I would think that the coaching staff, again, if what we saw Saturday is truly a reflection of what they've seen over 11 spring practices, then CJ Carr is at the top of the pecking order. They've got to have internal questions, as he said, because you want this to be, if it's going to extend into fall camp in his eyes. He's obviously not willing, to make a decision, an ultimate decision right now. So they've got to have the conversations internally and then with these guys and let them know, here's where you stand right now. So there's some different ways to go with this. And, this is at least, looking at the chat right here, there's more disagreement about who should be the 2 and who should be the 3, I think, right now. So if CJ Carr is clearly number 1, it feels like the decision is, those other 2 trying to figure out who number 2 is. And again, there's not that much practice left right now. What's going to happen to the guy who finds himself at number 3? Does he ultimately end up going into the portal? This is tougher to me, Vince, again, this question between 2 and 3. So where do you see, that kind of aspect of it shaping up right now?
Well, it's going to be interesting. It'd be an interesting conversation to have, right? Because, what is Steve thinking? What is Kenny thinking? Do they want to start right now, no matter what? And if that's the case, then I think you have to give them the option to leave. Not that they need the option, but you know what I'm saying? Like you have to have that discussion with them.
Yeah. Does even the number 2 guy want to stick around?
Correct. Does Kenny want to hang out and be the number 2, get his degree, and then, head off for greener pastures someplace else? Does Steve want to be a starting quarterback in college football? And that's where the period is, right? Because I think he gets his degree this year, I assume. So do you want to be a starting quarterback in college football? It's not going to be at Notre Dame. So if you want to be a starting quarterback someplace, we will do everything in our power to help you achieve that someplace else. Like, let us know who to call. You know what I mean? Like, we will help you do that, right? And then it just, are both of them leaving? Are both of them staying? Is one of them staying over the other? And then you figure out what the number 2 quarterback spot looks like. Is it going to be a true number 2 quarterback? Like, if Steve Angeli sticks around, it's going to be the same as it's been for the last 3 years. Steve Angeli is your backup. He goes in during mop-up time, and he's a consummate, teammate and pro, and you have no problem when he goes in the game if he needs to, right? He's the perfect number 2 quarter. Like, I could see Steve Angeli being a backup quarterback in the NFL for the next 20 years. Like, that's who he is. Like, he could be that guy, okay? Now, if it's Kenny, I think it's a little bit different, to be perfectly honest with you. I think you're going to keep him involved, because if you're looking at your number 2 quarterback versus your number 1 quarterback, okay, does he bring something to the table that the number 1 guy doesn't? If it's Steve Angeli, the answer is no. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just being, I'm being honest.
So you're leading into, would you have a package?
Yeah, I would.
Number 2
It'd
guy?
be like Tyler Buckner.
If it's Steve Angeli, no. But yeah, if it's Kenny Minchey, yes, because of the Buckner.
Correct.
Because he does have the legs to do some unique things.
He'd be a potential goal line situation, a short yardage guy, because he is actually really good in, the zone read and some things like that. Not that CJ can't do it, but Kenny is better at it, right? And so he does bring something to the table that CJ doesn't. And so I would have something for him to do to keep him occupied, right? And again, if he wants to go someplace else, I'm going to help him out too, because that's what you do with a guy that you brought in and that you consider family. You help him out. I would ask him to stay, but if he really wants to go, I'm helping him leave.
Yeah. I mean, there's no guarantee, if CJ, well, let's put it this way. I would think if you're Marcus Freeman, Mike Denbrock, Gino Guidugli, and you're talking to these guys, like it's whoever the top two guys, like you're not naming a number one right now. It's like, these are the top two guys. You're the number three guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because the number two guys are still competing for the job ultimately. I don't think it's, so I guess my point is, if you're one of the top two, you're odds are you're going to stick around and compete for the job, right? But if you're number three, that's where the real decision comes in.
And I don't know how those conversations are going to go. Like somebody said earlier, it's an easy decision, but it's a tough conversation.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? And that's what you signed up for as a coach. I mean, you're going to have those tough conversations. And I think you owe it to all three players to have that conversation.
Especially at this position, because again, any other position, you're going to rotate, really, with the exception probably of offensive line. But even there, you see some guys come in, from time to time. But any other position, you're going to rotate on and off the field. Defensive line, you're playing 2 and 3 guys deep, depending on what kind of talent you have on your defensive line. Linebackers, they had a 5-man rotation for 3 spots last year. Corners, safeties, wide receivers.
They've rotated offensive linemen before.
That's exactly right. But it's different at quarterback, and that's why the conversation is so much different and so much tougher at quarterback, because there can ultimately only be one guy, and everybody obviously wants to be the guy.
And people are 100% correct when they talk about the fact that 1 through 5, Notre Dame has never been this good at quarterback. Like, they've never had this kind of depth. They never have. Look, there are legitimate arguments to be made for all these guys to start or to be a future starter at Notre Dame. Absolutely legitimate conversations. And so, yes, the conversation is going to be tough, but it's a conversation that also needs to happen. It just does.
Jeremiah says he's not convinced that it's clear cut for number one. I mean, again, I would disagree with that.
I would too.
Like, Kenny Minchey has a ton of talent, and he's better now than he was a year ago. But CJ Carr is also better now than he was a year ago. And Carr was pretty good as a true freshman in his first spring last year. And to me, just, again, all those things that we ran through, the way he anticipates, the way he reads the defense, all the different things that he does, to me, are just all at a different level than either of the other two guys.
And here's one other thing else. I want to bring up another one of Jeremiah's comments here, because I appreciate Jeremiah chiming in here. He says, right on, haven't made the spring games, but did make the Virginia and Indiana game last year. It's not, quote unquote, clear as day, or the coaches would have made that decision already.
No.
Here's what I would tell you. Number one, you have no idea what the coaches are doing behind the scenes. They don't have to announce squat diddly to us.
They probably have, a strong direction that they're leaning in.
Correct.
They're definitely not telling us. And I don't think they're necessarily telling the guys either. Again, it's about, because as far as Marcus Freeman is concerned, this competition is going to go into fall training camp, to like how far it goes into fall training camp to be determined. But as like he said at the end of that clip, you would want it to be 2 guys going into fall rather than 3 guys. And it just realistically, it has to be 2 guys. It can't be 3 guys battling for the job.
Brian said something interesting on the post-game show, and I haven't had a chance to look back, and you're not going to be able to see it very clearly on the TV copy, but apparently it was something that he was watching during the game. He said the receivers run routes differently when 13 is behind center, because they know that every one of the people running a route has a chance of getting the football. And when other guys are behind center, that's not really the case. And so they don't run the top ends of their routes very well, or they stop running their routes, or whatever the case may be. Now, I am not excusing that as a practice, as a wide receiver or tight end or running back. I'm not excusing that at all. But when you do play those positions and there's 0 chance of you getting the football, right, human nature is going to, kick in at some point, right? And he was saying that when CJ Carr was at quarterback, those guys were running their routes very, very well. And that's first team, second team, and third team guys, because they knew there was a chance of them getting the ball. It just, guys, they know. The guys generally know what's going on. The coaches don't have to say anything. Guys know. And it shows. That's where I'll keep that. I mean, it just shows.
So TD4ND wants to know who would be the odd man out for the 3.
Well,
you know, and again, like, this is so tough because to me, yes, part of the problem with this decision is whoever number 3 is, the odds dramatically increase that he's going to hit the transfer portal
for
when
sure.
It's all said and done, right? And again, like Steve Angeli, he does run the actual offense better than Kenny Minchey right now. That doesn't mean Kenny Minchey is still better than he was a year ago. He's doing 100%. It better than he's ever done right now, and he's more athletic and all those different things. But Minchey does run the offense better, you know. So like if you got into a pinch in the middle of the game, like ideally Steve Angeli would be the perfect guy to come off the bench and give you probably the best chance to win off the bench. Whereas there's going to be a little bit more variance with Kenny Minchey because of the fact that he's still relatively raw in comparison. But at the same time, he has a ton more upside still, you know, like when you're talking about developing quarterbacks. So like, that's why to me, the real competition is between those two guys. But like, you know, us from the outside in, it's not that easy to me. Like,
right.
What would you say? Who would be like, do you have an odd, like, who would be your number 3? Who would be your odd guy out?
Well, yeah, see, that's a great question.
You know, like Jeremiah was saying before, that it's not clear cut, that it's really still between Carr and Minchey, and that Angeli would be, you know,
if you're just talking from a talent standpoint, right? Just God,
pure talent. It's obviously Carr and Minchey,
correct. And then
there is more that goes into it.
Absolutely, I completely agree. That's why I said, like, Steve Angeli is your prototypical perfect backup quarterback. He just is. You know what I mean? And you know, could Kenny stick around for a couple of years behind CJ Carr and then take over the reins? He could if he wants to wait that long. I think that'd be a pretty easy handoff, to be perfectly honest with you, to go from CJ Carr to Kenny Minchey. I think I can think of a lot worse ways to have your next 2 quarterbacks at Notre Dame be those 2 guys. You know what I mean? I would say, because somebody else asked, let's see, where is it? Here it is. Who do you give a better chance to land in a good spot?
Right. I was just going to I think it's Angeli.
I think it's Angeli because he has film, right? And I think he could definitely do that. Now, depends on what your definition of a good spot is. How about that? Because
yeah, and that's going to be, especially now that it's the spring portal too. And
sure,
you know, there's a lot of teams that have gone through their own spring, and maybe some of them aren't happy with what they saw, you know, from their quarterbacks this spring, and that opens up a door.
Like Kenny Minchey was committed to Pitt. Could he end up at Pitt? That's a possibility, right? Brian always likes to say that he thinks that Steve Angeli would be a good fit at Rutgers. Right? It's a Big Ten team. So which is a better spot? Is it Pitt? Is it Rutgers? I mean,
honestly, a program like that is probably going to be best case scenario for whoever it is.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think like
a program of that level.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that would happen. I don't think any of them are going to land at an upper echelon Power 4 team. I don't think that would happen.
The problem, like DK says, Minchey at Tennessee makes sense.
Okay, I mean,
is Tennessee going to see Kenny Minchey as a guy who can come in and win the starting job today, like jumping into a new system? And
I honestly don't know what Tennessee's depth chart looks like. I'd be the first one to admit it. I have no idea. Because I think everybody figured Nico is going to be there for a few more years. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Look, I think Kenny Minchey's got a ton of talent. I think he can make any team better. But would the team take that chance on him? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, right? Notre Dame has 5 quarterbacks plus Tyler Buckner on their roster right now.
If Tennessee was watching the Blue Gold game on Peacock the other day, did they see enough from Kenny Minchey to say that's the guy we need to bring in? He can be our starting.
Give that guy $2 million. Like, let's roll.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like that. It's still.
I think that they would see a lot of potential, but I don't think that. Like, if I were watching it, and seeing him really for the first time since high school, he's from Tennessee. Exactly.
I forgot about that actually. So I think they could both find a spot for sure. They, somebody said, will all 3 of these guys get starts this year? I think all 3 of them could be starters at different programs. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Right. We're not having a Kenny Minchey funeral, Sly Fox. Somebody asked us if they would command a spot someplace else. Nobody's having a funeral. I would like to keep all 3 of them if you're going to give me the option. So I'm not projecting anybody to hit the portal or wanting anybody to hit the portal. I want all of them. I want to be greedy, and I want all 5 guys on the roster, including Tyler Buckner.
But the odds are at least one guy is going to hit the portal.
That's the reality of it, right?
Right.
And we're going to know in the next week. Like that's also the reality of it. We're going to know in about a week, week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, what the situation is.
But Decaf asks, is there a possibility we could see 2 quarterbacks hit the transfer portal? Sure.
Yes, absolutely.
But again, I think it's less likely because, the way it feels like Marcus Freeman is going to present this to the quarterbacks is, look, these 2 guys are the top 2 guys right now. You 2 are going to be battling for this job at the start of, through the summer with, summer workouts and at the start of fall training camp. This other 3rd guy, you're sitting at number 3 right now. So it feels like the number 3 guy is the guy who really has the decision to make because they're not naming a starting quarterback right now. They're not. They're not laying out a true depth chart right now. They're saying the top 2 guys, you're battling for the job. Number 3, you're number 3. Obviously, we would love you to stay and, still be a part of this program because there's a lot of great things that you bring to the program, but you're number 3 right now. So maybe that means you have a decision to make about,
let me ask you this.
Attachment to the program.
If you were Coach Freeman, would this scenario be on the table for you? Okay. CJ Carr is number 1. Like, that's it. You're the starter. And then you bring the other 2 guys in and, hey, we're going to battle it out for number 2. Like, would you have that conversation? Because that's a pretty honest conversation. Like, we don't know who our number 2 guy is going to be. We're going to let you 2 battle it out for number 2. And therefore,
but when are you going to battle it out? Like the next 3 practices?
Oh, no, in the fall. I'd be like, hey, in the fall, you're battling it for number 2.
So you're saying this is our number 1. Yeah. You 2 guys are battling it out for number 2.
Would you have that conversation? This is Sean and Vince having this conversation.
Honestly, I think that conversation gives you the greatest chance to have both of those 2 guys go to the portal this spring, as opposed to hanging around and battling it out in the fall.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I just don't want to dangle a carrot in front of a guy that is non-existent. Like, are you telling Kenny Minchey he has a legitimate shot of beating out CJ Carr?
Right.
Can you say that with a straight face? You know what I mean? And I mean that, hypothetically, not like, I'm just kidding. Like, I'm just saying, like, could you, like, you're actually legitimately, it's a 2 quarterback race in the fall. I don't know. After what we have seen, and again, we're not at every practice, but after what we have seen, and Coach Freeman saying this is a microcosm of the other 11 practices.
Yeah.
To me, that says CJ Carr is number 1, and we'll see what we do at number 2.
But again, like even people, live in the show right now and other people who we've heard from over the last few days. I mean, everyone, I think it sure feels like most people think CJ Carr is number 1, but there are enough people who even think, Steve should still be the guy now. So everybody processes all this in a different way. And especially if you're as close to it as the guys who've been battling it out for this job. I think they all process it in a different way.
Sure. Look, Marcus Freeman has some big decisions here to make in the next couple of weeks. Actually, this week probably. And I just don't know what the right answer is, if I'm being honest. When you talk about roster retention, you talk about depth. The only thing in the back of my mind that makes me very happy is the fact that they do have 6 quarterbacks on the roster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If both Steve and
do they have 6?
Well, so if you count Buckner.
Okay.
And I think he could be a backup. You know what I mean? Like, I think he could provide you depth and do all of those things. So if you lose 2, you still have 4. Now, 2 of them are walk-ons, but I know there's a lot of Rizak fans out there. Obviously, there's probably some closet Buckner fans out there as well. And Blake Ebert is a kid who, I mean, he's bigger than CJ Carr. Like, he's got a lot of attributes, right? Is he ready to be the number 2? I don't know, the answer to that. I honestly, and maybe I'll get some flack for this, I'd be okay with Tyler Buckner being the number 2 quarterback. I really would. I think he is mature enough. He has shown that over the last year and a half. He is mature enough to be the backup quarterback. He's smart enough to be the backup quarterback.
He's the most experienced quarterback on the roster right now.
Yes. Of all 6, he's the most experienced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
I mean, he's the most experienced player at the quarterback position, because obviously technically he's not a quarterback right now. He's a wide receiver.
Agreed.
But yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, I think there are worse positions that you could be in, having CJ Carr as your starter, having Tyler Buckner as your 2, and then having Blake Hebert as your 3.
And I mean, look, a lot of people obviously from the minute Tyler Buckner showed back up at Notre Dame have, like, oh, surely he's going to play quarterback. Well,
I mean, that's not the plan.
This is the scenario that I've pointed to all along. The only scenario that gets Tyler Buckner back into the quarterback room is if 2 guys hit the transfer portal at the end of this spring.
Correct. Yep. Like I said.
And don't forget, like, it's, as we have seen in other programs, it's not out of the realm of possibility that even the guy who sticks around to battle for the job in the fall but loses it could leave the team.
That's very true.
As long as he doesn't play, if he's not going to surpass his minimum, his game minimum, he could very easily, just leave the team, keep his eligibility, and hit the transfer portal in December.
There's a lot of quarterback numbers available right now. Although technically 26 could be a quarterback number too.
True.
It's weird, but it could.
Yeah.
But a lot of single digit numbers available too. So just saying. So anyway, the only point I want to make with that whole conversation is that Notre Dame has been in worse shape in the past in their quarterback room than they would be going into 25 with Carr as your starter, Buckner as your number 2, and Hebert as your number 3, and then Rizak as your number 4. They have been in much worse scenarios than that right there. And that's worst case scenario going into 25 that both Minchey and Steve leave in the portal. So
Anthony says, can we take a second? Appreciate that we are able to have these discussions. Kelly could never get a quarterback room this loaded. Not even close.
This is what I'm saying, Anthony. Thank you for putting it much more eloquently than what I have been saying.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, because that's exactly my point.
These are all first world problems.
Yes. 100%. We have never had conversations like this before. Ever.
And, let's remember Steve Angeli committed when Brian Kelly was still the head coach.
This is
like
true.
When you look at who recruited, whom in this room, or, in that room.
Yeah. So you're not wrong.
Yep. No shot.
Whoa, why, Brian
gets a quarterback number?
Why not? Look at the let's.
I mean, if he ends up back in the quarterback room, he'll get a quarterback number.
He could be number 0, which would be hilarious. He could be, let's see here, number 5, because there's no offensive 5. He could be number 7, because there's no offensive 7. He could be 10. There's no offensive 10. Let's see what else we got here. He could be 16. There's no offensive 16.
There's a lot of numbers available.
There's a ton of numbers available. And then, obviously, if Minchey and Angeli leave, 8 and 18 are both open. So, yeah, there's a ton of quarterback numbers available, my friend.
I concur. Well, the transfer portal opens in 2 days. The 16th is when it opens. It closes.
I love it.
On the 25th.
Be glued to social media.
I bet.
When that happens.
Man.
Let's go.
Okay, Vince, we've come to that time.
Is it really?
Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's go, baby. Rapid fire. Let's do it. Monday.
Fill in the blank. Version. Saturday's blue gold game format was blank.
I actually enjoyed it. I like good on good, best on best, whatever you want to call it. I do enjoy that. I think you get a better read at what the team is going to be as much as you possibly can, as opposed to a sandlot game, which is basically what the draft is. Now, I think the draft is fun. Like I think it's fun to watch, what the strategy is and things like that. The scoring is an issue. Like they probably need to fix that or whatever, or don't keep score at all. Like you don't keep score. Who cares?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it makes no difference. They didn't keep score during 7-on-7. Just don't keep score. But I like best on best. I think it gives you the best idea of what you're looking at. And I understand why they did 7-on-7, but I didn't like that part.
The 7-on-7 part, I think we could all do without.
Yeah.
Right. But the actual, like you said, the best on best, and like I like the fact that you didn't have the split squads and the mixed squads and all that different kind of stuff. Right. And like, especially, this spring with a 3-man quarterback competition, we got to see as equal a reps as I think you're ever going to see.
Yeah.
So I really thought that, all things considered, I wasn't really sure, like what I would think about it going in, but when it was all said and done, I came away really liking what we saw from the format out there Saturday afternoon. So I was in favor, like these intermissions where they kind of, ramped back down and went to 7-on-7, like those were somewhat unique, like what real purpose they actually served. I don't know. I guess they got, to get a chance to give some other guys some opportunities to get out there on the field. Like we were saying early, it felt like when they threw the 7-on-7 out there, it's like, man, are they really that worried about an offensive lineman? But then we saw Knapp and Shrouth out there right away, and we saw Emil Wagner out there.
Okay, let me just get this out of the way because I don't think you and I haven't had a chance to talk about it. I love the fact that they actually had 4/5 of what is projected as the starting offensive line out there, because you did get a true idea of what these quarterbacks could do. Look, last Saturday, we saw them kind of running for their lives to a degree. Now, they were all running for their lives, so it was an even playing field. But we were actually able to see them sit in the pocket, process the defense, make some throws, things like that. So I'm happy that they were able to get those guys out of mothballs for the spring and let them actually participate in the spring game to see what a starting offensive line could potentially look like.
DK said Hebert didn't have an O-line. He did in the one. He got like one brief series toward the end.
Yeah, at the very end he did.
He obviously didn't for the 7-on-7, but he did toward the end anyway. So yeah, I liked the format. I wouldn't mind if they just did it like this going forward. Because like you said, like the score was completely irrelevant. Like there were a couple of times I glanced at the scoreboard.
I had no idea the score ended up being 70-something to 30-something. I had no idea because the offense just started to creep away and just started to pull away. And I didn't look at the score one time. So, yeah. Just don't keep score, Marcus. It's okay. He's like, I got to tweak with the scoring. No, you don't. Just no score.
Not at all. Nobody cared.
Yep.
Luke Talich led all defenders with 9 tackles in the blue gold game. Here's Marcus Freeman on Talich.
He's really done a good job. That's a reflection of how he's been this spring. A guy that's taken advantage of his opportunities and has really been focused on improvement. Right, and some of that improvement is production, as you saw today, and some is areas that we got to continue to attack and improve. But he's been really consistent, and that's been a challenge for him and our entire team. but it's really good to see a guy out there performing consistently, and today was a reflection of Luke's performance all spring.
So, Vince, what kind of role do you see for Luke Talich this season?
I think he's got a great shot of being in the rotation at safety. Obviously, they're not going to go deeper than 4. One of those spots is probably, locked down. I think that's a pretty easy bet. Mm-hmm. And then, the transfer kid is probably going to get an opportunity to be in that rotation. Then I think it's fairly wide open. I mean, we've seen good things from a lot of the different safeties, right? And I think you could make a case for a lot of those different guys to get those last 2 spots. If we're rewarding people for sticking around and being loyal, then Luke has a great opportunity to be in there. No, I'm joking, obviously, but he's been around for a little bit, and he has impressed when he's been on the field. And he, I believe, was with the 2s pretty much all season last year. Mm-hmm. So this is an opportunity for him to step up and be in that rotation. I think he's got a shot at it.
I think so too. I think that at a very minimum, he's going to be on every special team, basically. Like he's going to be out there and see action all over the place. He's a freaking heat-seeking missile, like
right.
Like just look at those back-to-back stops that he made down there in the red zone on Saturday. And then, I'm curious because safety has become and you ran through some of them, you've obviously got Adon Schuler. You've got Luke Talich. You've got Stroman obviously coming in from Virginia Tech, but then you've also got Urlacher out there, and you got Jadon Blair out there. You've got depth and some good quality. And I haven't even mentioned Tay Johnson, and he made a few plays again out there. So that's 6 guys just off the top of your head. I would be shocked if we don't see, they've got the different packages where they're rolling 3 safeties out there at times. And, when you consider, just where, college football is, with all the receivers and everything else, I think you could see 3 safeties on the field pretty often this season for Notre Dame. And I would think that he'll end up being one of them. DK asked where was Urlacher? I don't remember seeing him out there. Was he out there?
Oh, he played. He had a couple good hits. Yeah.
Did he? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Must not. They must have blown by me then. So yeah, but a lot of really good quality, both play and depth at safety. So I think that he's going to factor into that, and I think we're going to see a lot of the safeties over the course of this season. Again, it's to the point where it's almost like, did you need to bring in Stroman? But we haven't had a chance to see Stroman yet. So I'm really curious to get a chance to, get eyes on him in the fall and, during training camp and kind of see, what he's going to bring to this mix as well. Obviously, they saw something in him, and that's why they brought him in here. Elijah Burris had a couple catches for 21 yards Saturday. We saw, obviously some of him the week before as well in that open practice that we got. Do you think that Elijah Burris could be a guy who can crack the top 6 in the receiver rotation this fall?
Yeah. So my initial thought was no. No. But then I went to the roster and I started looking. Oh, I forgot Fields. Okay, let me write him down here real quick. So I went to the roster and I started writing down,
who's there,
who's a guarantee, and then what's left, right? So I think you've got 4 guys that are locks for the rotation: Greathouse, Pauling, Faison, and Fields.
Right.
Those 4 in, right?
Yep.
So that means you got 2 spots. And I think those 2 spots are going to be battled for by Micah Gilbert, Cam Williams, KK Smith, Burris, Saldate. I think those are kind of the next group.
Yeah.
And so that's 5 guys for 2 spots. So there's going to be 3 guys on the outs there, right? So he has a chance. I would say he's in that next tier of guys right now. He's also a true freshman, right? It'll be a tough hill to climb. If I was going to bet right now, I'd say probably Gilbert and Williams have the best opportunity to be the next 2 guys. Gilbert more so than Williams right now. But they obviously see something in Williams because he's been running with the first team every time we've seen practice. So that
he just hasn't seemed as consistent though.
I don't disagree with
Burris.
you.
Between the 2, Burris seems more consistent. And I would agree with what DJ is saying. His route running is good. I think it's really good, and his hands are really good as well. Like, to me, just in the 2 practices that we've seen, and I'm including Blue Gold, obviously, is the practice. Burris has been the more consistent of the 2. So I agree with everything that you said. And I think that in training camp, he's going to be
got a shot
in that group that's going to have a shot. And over the course of the season, I think that he's going to have a shot.
I think that the only thing that would make me wary is Micah Gilbert had a hell of a spring last year. And we were saying all of these things about Micah Gilbert, and he didn't touch the field all season. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now, they're different guys. They play different positions, I believe. Like, okay, it's cool. Like, whatever. That's the only thing that would give me pause is that.
Yeah, I'm not writing him in ink by any means.
For sure. Right. But I think he's in that group, right?
He's in pencil. Yeah. In that group of guys, as you said, who are going to be really the competition is for 2 spots between 4 or 5 guys there.
Yeah.
Rattled off.
Yep.
So I think he's definitely going to be in the mix. And obviously you had a guy like Gilbert who was injured all spring, and he was out there a little bit doing some warm-ups before the game the other day, but we didn't get a chance to see where he is right now. So how much has he improved since last
right 100%. And I would say, like I said, I feel very good about those 4 being locks. You didn't bring Will Pauling in to sit the bench, obviously. I need to see more out of him, though. Like, if all things were equal and he wasn't a guy who came in as a transfer, and he was just a guy that was out there, I don't know that I would have him as a lock as my 4. I would have him probably in that next level of guys competing. But right now, I think he's a lock, though. Like I said, I don't think you brought him in to sit the bench. So I think he is a lock. So it's 2 guys for the rest.
Josh says, will he beat out Faison?
No chance.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Chance that happens. Faison is really, really freaking good.
Faison's one of your top 3 definite receivers.
Oh, yeah.
Right now.
At times, he was the best receiver on your roster.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a former walk-on, he's not going to beat out Faison. No chance, man.
I mean, the only thing with Faison is what their focus has been this spring. Hands just have to be more consistent. Hold on the ball a little bit more. But other than that, does everything really well. What do you think about this? What Christopher said, will we see a hurry-up offense with the depth that we have at receivers?
Well, if you're running a hurry-up offense, you're not really going to be subbing receivers out, per se. You usually keep the same guys on the field, and it's just go, go, go. But with that said, if you could figure out a way, and it's definitely possible to sub guys out and move them along and do those different things, the problem is the hurry-up gets slowed down if you sub, right? Because then the defense can sub. So that is the detriment of a hurry-up offense. And so you don't necessarily need depth for a hurry-up offense. You need 3 guys that have longevity on the field, right? That they have the endurance to be out there doing that kind of stuff. Otherwise, the defense will just slow you down with their subbing. Right. So, but your point, I do like your point, though, Christopher. They are going to have depth at wide receiver. It will allow them to do some other things.
Yeah, and at the very least, again, like a guy like Burris could be a guy who could get on the field, like end of half type, like you're running streaks and those kind of things, because he does have some speed and he's got the ability to get deep, so he could be a guy who could factor into some of that. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame's game against Boise State, October 4th, will be the Peacock-only streaming game this season.
This one makes sense. I don't think was it Louisville last year, right? Like, yes. I don't feel like that one made a whole lot of sense, if I'm being honest. But I think this one makes sense.
It's a playoff team.
It is, but they don't have Austin Genty anymore either.
No.
So
Ashton, but yeah.
Sorry, Ashton. It's Austin, Ashton.
That's okay.
Whatever. They'll get it right on his paycheck, which he'll be making a lot of that.
Yes.
I don't know. I just it's still, to me, in my mind, there's still kind of a group of 5 team, even though I know that just.
They are still a group of 5 team.
Who they are.
They were the best of the group of 5 teams last year.
Agreed. Cool.
And a lot of people are justifiably upset about this. You have to come to grips with the fact that every year there's going to be one Peacock game, and it happens to be Boise State this year. And like, I guess they announced this on Peacock during the game the other day, which is kind of weird. Like if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there, like that.
Somebody caught it, but I didn't see it until today. So
yeah,
I thought that was kind of funny, to be perfectly honest with you.
I mean, to me, the bigger thing, again, you got to get used to it, but it's not just that it's on Peacock, because watching streaming games, like, it's one thing when it's an NFL game on Thursday night, it's a standalone game, it's the only game. But like if you're watching on Saturday and there's other games going on, like, because it's on streaming, you can't flip back and forth, like the other games, during commercials and stuff like that. The fast forward and the rewind stink, with it, it's not as functional as a DVR. And I mean, that goes for rewatching it afterwards as well. Like the archive game, it's just not as easy, to get to the spot that you want to, because it was streaming. And then, we were making fun of it earlier, Vince, like in the press box as well. Like, it's going to be like 30 seconds behind.
Awful.
Because like usually what happens if the game's on regular TV, you watch the play live, then you can kind of look up and see at least part of the play still going on TV. And then if they show their replay, they'll get right to it. But now, because it's on streaming, that's a lot different in the press box, so it is what it is. Again, like, there's always going to be a streaming game,
right? One
streaming game. You don't have to like it, but it's going to happen.
But let me ask you this. So Boise State's going to be the streaming game. Obviously, it's also always a home game, right? If you weren't going to pick Boise State, who would you have picked?
Well, I'm trying to think of the other. It's not going to be USC. It's not going to be Texas A&M.
Yeah, here are the home games, right? Texas A&M, Purdue, Boise State, NC State, Southern Cal, Navy, Syracuse.
Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, it's either Syracuse or Purdue. But obviously, like Tim is asking why they did this in the first place. It's because Peacock /NBC.
Part of the contract, baby.
Well, yeah, it's part of the contract, but it's part of the contract because they're trying to drive viewers over to Peacock to get them to subscribe, because Peacock's, their platform has not been great. It's not been great, and they're trying to get subscribers over there. And by making this a little bit, by making it not, there's no MAC teams this year, but making it not a MAC team, not Purdue, not Syracuse, the lower tier games on your schedule, because you're definitely not going to pick. It's not going to be USC and Texas A&M, because those are both.
I was still surprised they put games. Louisville on Peacock last year. Like, that actually surprised me.
But again, they're putting a little bit better quality, opponent on Peacock, because to try to make it more in demand, to try to drive more people over there. I mean, that's why they're doing it.
Yep. No, I don't disagree with that at all.
How much success they have with it, I don't know, because they never release the numbers, which tells you that the numbers aren't that great, because typically if the numbers are good, everyone's going to brag about them. And they've never had the here's our great ratings that we've had on Peacock for any of these games, regardless of who the opponent is. So,
I mean, I'll probably watch more home games on TV this time around than, for the next couple of years than I ever have before. So I'll let you know how it goes. I've never watched a game on Peacock, so I don't know, because I've always been there. So I don't know. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
It might matter to me this year. We'll see.
Yep. Fill in the blank. The Nico Iamaleava situation at Tennessee is blank.
Daytime drama, man. Like that's what it is. And it's like, I want to know, like, for a little while there, I was like, okay, what's going to happen next? Like, where is this going? Because it is drama filled, and it is NIL with no rules in a nutshell, right? I mean, that's what it is. And so it's like, where is this going to go? And I give props to Dan Lanning, which I never thought I would say out loud, for letting Heupel know that his quarterback was sniffing around Oregon. Number one, give him a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
Number two, I give a lot of credit for Tennessee and being like, we're not going to give you that. So you can get to stepping. Like, we're done here. Like, I give them a lot of credit to not just backing down and paying him whatever he's demanding or whatever dad is demanding. And it sounds like this whole thing's being run by dad. It's drama. And now it sounds like the only teams that are interested are like UCLA and then group of 5 teams. Like, good luck.
Yeah. You go from a team that was in the playoff, which he probably tried to leverage, to a team that potentially is, you're going to be lucky to be 500.
Oh, UCLA is an afterthought.
Yeah.
I mean, be honest.
But I mean, it's just crazy. Like the first fall or the first spring training camp holdout, like a guy tried to hold out at the end of spring. Yeah, I'm not going to play in your spring game if you don't give me the cash. And it's nuts.
On him.
It is
no
nuts
way he thought
what college athletics has gone to in such a
Yes.
short amount of time.
Yes.
To see this kind of thing. Like, I never would have thought we would see a college football holdout like this.
It's ridiculous. The fact that he didn't go to practice, like as soon as he didn't go to practice that day,
didn't show up at meetings. Yeah.
Right. Tennessee was like, we're done. Like, this is so stupid. And I'm with them 1,000%. I'm glad they did it. I'm so glad they did it.
Absolutely. And again, like, as if making $2 million already wasn't enough. You needed more than that.
Making like $2.5 million. Like, what's 400,000 between friends? But like, he was making a crap ton of money. And from what I understand, he was getting money while he was still in high school to go to Tennessee.
Wow. Somebody
reported that. Like, they started paying him before he was even enrolled at Tennessee. And he was scheduled to make like $15 million from Tennessee from the time that he started until the time he left. And that wasn't good enough for you?
Right.
Are you kidding me?
But again, I mean, you nailed it. Crazy dad's involved.
Well,
that's right.
I'm still trying to negotiate Dylan's NIL deal. They haven't gotten back to me. I don't know what the deal is.
I want a special chin strap.
We obviously didn't win the jersey conversation, so that's okay.
So Notre Dame men's basketball got a commitment over the weekend. 6'8" forward Carson Tout from Northern Arizona. What do you think of this move, Vince?
I mean, he brings to the table a lot of things that Notre Dame needs, right? He's a rebounder. He's a hard-nosed kid. He's a lunch pail kid, that kind of stuff. He's got a lot of, tread on the tire, or he doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires. He's been a 4-year starter, down there.
Big Sky.
Yep. Big Sky country. Yeah, 100%. Or Big Sky Conference, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because when I saw Northern Illinois, the funny part is there's a kid from the Northern Arizona, football team that is transferring to my son's football team.
That's right.
Who's a kicker.
Punter. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was like, Northern Arizona. Like, what? They're going to Notre Dame? Like, that didn't. Okay. I don't think it fills the need of what Micah Shrewsbury wants on his roster as like a starter necessarily. Like, I could see him being a sixth man, that kind of a thing. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's going to go and be the ACC Player of the Year or something. But I feel like they better have some other options.
I mean, they obviously have a touted freshman class coming in.
True.
They're going to have to, probably snag at least a couple more players out of the transfer portal. But, the guy averaged a double-double. I don't expect him to come in and average a double-double in the ACC, but he's 6'8". He's got a ton of experience. Shrewsbury needs, as you said, this kind of guy on the roster. So sure. I think he's a nice piece to the puzzle going forward. A great, veteran type presence that they can have on the roster next year.
He is. Here's what I will say, and this comes from I watched a couple of his highlights, stuff like that, right? And looking at like his resume, he's Matt Alaco he's played a lot of basketball. He's an older guy. He can come in, be a leader. They put too much on Matt Alaco, though, when he was at Notre Dame. Like, Matt Alaco is not your starting point guard, and they shouldn't put that kind of pressure on him. I realize Marcus Burton got hurt and I get it. He shouldn't have been that guy. Like, and I don't think this kid from Northern Arizona should be that guy. He can be a piece to the puzzle, just like you said, and a really good piece to the puzzle, but don't put everything on him. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's where I'm at with this whole thing. He's Matalacco. Just don't do what you did to Matalacco.
Right. But, look, you've got Marcus Burton, obviously. So, like he's going to be a junior now at this point. You're going to have Braden Shrewsbury, same deal. He's going to be a junior. You got this guy. He's going to be a fifth year. He's going to be a grad student guy coming in, So again, like it couldn't be, because like, remember when, that class that Mike Bray had, wasn't his last 2 years, but that class, where they brought, I think they had like 5 guys and they were all like top 100 guys and that kind of thing, or most of them were top 100 guys, but like so much was on them because there wasn't that much else on the roster at that point, and it just never panned out for them, and none of them turned into, like what they thought they were. But so I think the fact that, again, like you get a guy like this who's been around the block a little bit, and you've got a couple of juniors, and that's kind of crazy to think that Burton and Shrewsbury are already going to be juniors at this point. But I think that it sets the roster up nicely. So, you don't have to rely too much on a guy like him, and you also don't have to lean too much on all of these freshmen walking in the door. You don't have to put too much pressure on them either.
Which is what makes him a valuable piece to the puzzle. I'm with you 1,000% on that.
Yeah, exactly. So the women have signed 6'3" forward Malaya Coles from Wake Forest as well. What do you think of this one?
I have to defer to you on this one because I don't know. Like, is this here's the thing about the women's roster, and you can absolutely correct me if I'm wrong. They need more than one person. Like, I assume
they
there's
do.
going to be more
They're
down
far
the pipe.
from done. They are far from done. I
Okay.
mean, I would think that they're going to bring in at least 5 more players.
That's what I thought too. Okay. It's been slow moving. Like, I expected some more news a little bit quicker, I guess is the best way to put it. But go ahead.
And I know some people are getting impatient about this, but I kind of went back and looked to remind myself, like Leah Tu King and Liza Carlin didn't sign until early May, like the first week of May last year. So like, and those, remember, were the only 2 players they brought in from the portal last year.
Just a few more weeks then. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, there's still plenty of time to go in this. Like she averaged like almost 9 points, 5 rebounds, and again, like she's a grad student type. She can shoot the 3 a little bit. She's got the size. She's basically like Maddie Westfeld, Liza Carlin size at 6'3". So I think that, again, kind of similar to Tout. I wanted to say Hout. I knew it wasn't Hout, but it did, like, similar to him. It's a nice piece, and it's a nice first piece to the puzzle.
Yeah.
Like, and the fact that she's already played in the ACC, I think is, a help as well. Like she's, she knows what that's like. She's been through the block a little bit, and there's some familiarity there, obviously, with the program. So it's a nice piece. It's a nice first piece. They do still have a lot of work to do, but the other side of this, like for the people, again, who are like, why haven't they got more players? Why haven't they signed more players? Look, there are visits going on. There's plenty of, communication going on and that kind of stuff. There's still roughly 1,100 players, though, available in the transfer portal right now. Only 20% of the players who have gone into the portal have signed. So there are still plenty of players out there to be, to like,
yes,
it'll happen. You'll start seeing more in the near future. The other side of this, though, as well, because, again, remember, there was all this panic about Notre Dame. Oh, you lost 4 players. The culture is shot, everything else. The final 4 teams had 11 total players go into the portal. UCLA, final 4 team, 6 players into the transfer portal. They lost their entire freshman class to the transfer portal.
Wow.
This season, a final 4 team, so South Carolina and Texas each had 2, UConn had 1, and then USC, a team that didn't go to the final 4, but they made it to the Elite 8. They had 4 players go to the portal as well. 60 plus teams had at least 7 players go into the portal.
That's nuts.
This offseason.
7 players?
7.
That's like a roster.
Yes.
Dang.
It is nuts.
Okay.
It is It is everywhere, so.
And the thing is, a lot of those players aren't going to find a home.
No, I know.
That's the sad part, because
there are a couple players, like kind of looking at, some of the reports that I've seen and, the different interests. There's a couple, like, it's like that player is getting all this interest. It just shows how desperate some of these other teams are.
And that's like, if my kid ever was going to jump into the portal or whatever, you better have a landing spot, like kind of sort it out before you jump in the portal.
Right.
Once you do it, there's no turning back, and you may have just ended your career, and I, as a dad, I would hate to see that a career end like that.
Yep. Did you watch any of Rory McIlroy's up and down path to winning the Masters yesterday?
I watched most of the day yesterday, actually.
Did you? Okay.
And it was the first day that I really watched. I watched a little bit on Saturday, but I watched pretty much the whole thing on Sunday for the most part. It was about an hour, kind of in the middle.
I couldn't remember like how into golf you are.
Not really. I do really like the Masters for whatever reason. Maybe it's just because I want spring and like summer to come at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like I'm watching baseball and I'm watching the Masters and like that kind of stuff. And it was entertaining. Like this Masters was very, very entertaining.
Yeah, I'm not into golf, and I was doing other things and watching other things. But then I saw everyone start tweeting about, oh, incredible shot. And, like Rory's blowing it and all this different stuff. And so I flipped over and I ended up watching the last hour. So the last 3 or 4 holes or whatever it was. And it was almost kind of like it was going to be Tin Cup, like he's going to pull a Roy McIlroy, just like a self-imposed meltdown out there, which he was doing. Like he hits the water and then he's in the sand trap and all this.
The sand trap on 18, it was like, okay, all he has to do is par out here and he wins.
Yeah.
And then he hits it into the sand and it's like, oh boy. And then he has a great sand shot.
I know.
Has a chance to win it and then misses the putt. And you're like, oh.
Right. But that was the difference, once they ended up, like with the playoff hole. Was like, unlike Roy McIlroy, he didn't do the exact same thing expecting a different result.
Yeah.
It was like kind of like that experience, gave him something different. And it ended up, I saw somebody tweet this and I thought it was a perfect analogy. It was kind of like the Cubs in Game 7 of the World Series in 2016. It's like, had the lead, looked like they had it won, then they give it up, come back and win in the end. So it all worked out. He finally got that monkey off his back.
It was I did feel real bad for Justin Rose because he had a great day on Sunday. Obviously, he led after the first round, then he has a great day on Sunday, and then he goes to the playoff, and he was the one in the playoff that lost to Sergio Garcia the last time there was a playoff and lost. And so he's never won a Masters, I don't believe, and he's lost in the playoff twice. Like that stings a little bit, but he had a great shot on 18 too. It's just that Rory's was better and he had a shorter putt and he hit it, so hats off to Rory because he is now the 5th or 6th. I can't remember exactly. 6th. Thank you. To have a career Grand Slam. Like that is some rare.
That's kind of amazing. I would have thought that it was more than that, honestly. As
Me
many
too.
great golfers as there have been over the years.
No kidding. And there was only I think was two of the guys' pictures were like in black and white. Like that's how long ago, it happened. So hats off to him. That was impressive.
Yeah, for a non-golf guy like me, I mean, it was just great drama, great TV, great sports, just great. And I saw like the last hour, like in that, or maybe even 7 to 7:15 at the very end, over 19 million people were watching.
Those are Tiger numbers right there.
Yeah. Suck me in. Again, I'm not a golf guy at all. Suck me right in. So bonus question for you. Andre Tonsel tweeted at me over the weekend.
I saw he tweeted at me too.
Did he,
I don't know if it's the same question.
Did he ask you about the food truck thing?
Yes.
What kind of food would we serve if we ran a food truck? I thought it was a very interesting question and the only one that was fit for rapid fire. I forgot to put it on the list earlier. So at least he tweeted at you, so you've probably thought about it a little bit. What's your answer?
Oh man, trying to this is so hard because it just depends on my on my mood as to what like kind of food that I'm interested in. You know what I mean? And
well, I mean, is there anything that you like? Do you have a specialty? Do you cook anything? I don't even know if you cook.
No, I don't. I cook because my kids need to eat.
Corey says sloppy joes. So basically, what you're saying is Vince should not run a food truck.
Like I made dinner tonight, if that makes you feel any better, but it was like Hamburger Helper. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't exactly a gourmet meal.
Yeah, I don't think Hamburger Helper in a food truck would.
No, I honestly, if I was gonna have a food truck, I would have Mexican. I would have tacos and burritos and like enchiladas and fun stuff like that. Like that's, I would have to hire somebody to make it, but that's what I would have. That's what I would have.
I mean, that's a great call. Like to me, the only way that I'm going to run a food truck is if it's something that I can actually make.
Fair.
So I would go with barbecue. I smoke a mean brisket. I smoke a mean pulled pork. Ribs I haven't tried as much because they're a little bit more temperamental. It seems like because obviously they're not as big. But I could go pulled pork and brisket all day long, and I feel like I'd do pretty well. So
I'd hit up the Sean Steyer's brisket truck.
There you go.
I would. That'd be good.
Yeah.
Would you have your own sauce? Would you have to come up with your own, or
I'm not as good at making my own. I've tried to kind of make my own sauces before. It hasn't gone that well.
Okay. All right.
It's hard to find, the sauce that I like the most. Did you ever go to Famous Dave's when they were in town? They had, I think it's called the Devil's Spit.
Okay.
It's like it's barbecue sauce with some heat, and they actually sell it at one of the grocery stores. I get that. Like that's my favorite. That and I like a little like Carolina, like vinegar-based sauce as well. But again, I don't make them very well. That's the one thing. I don't make the sauces very well. So
that's why you don't have a truck yet. Once you figure that out.
Andre says chili.
There are so many different kinds of chili, Andre.
I know.
Are you talking like, chili up here, southern chili, white chili, like, I was a judge for a chili cook-off, and there was like 15 different chilies, and they were all like drastically different.
Yep. Everybody makes chili a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure.
Yep.
All right. As Christopher said, WNBA draft getting underway.
Yes.
We'll see where Sonia Citron.
That's right. It's already at 7:30.
Yeah. She is supposed to go very high tonight.
Is it on ESPN?
I believe so.
Okay. I'm going to turn that back on upstairs.
Yep. All right, hit the like button before you leave, and we will talk to you tomorrow on Ivy Nation Sports Talk.